Hey everybody, Marcus Crawford here with the Idaho Quadcopter channel. Today with the Mavic Mini, we are going to make a little video about the basics of your first flight. So let's just call this a beginner's guide to your first flight with the Mavic Mini. Today's December 10th. It's a blue sky day here in Idaho, so I thought it'd be a good opportunity to do this. There's a lot of people that are going to find these under their Christmas tree and will have never flown a drone before. So I'm just going to make a video just to show, how to get the thing up in the air and, your first few flights or basics of flight, raising and lowering, return to home, banking right, banking left, pitching forward, pitching back, etc. So this video assumes that you have already taken your Mini out of the box and you've unpacked it and you've charged the battery, you've done your IMU calibration, etc. When this drone came over from China, that was the last place that anything was calibrated on it, so you need to do an IMU calibration out of the box. I don't know if DJI recommends it. I'm thinking that most drone flyers would recommend that you do that. And then you've already got an SD card inserted, micro SD card. You don't need a super high speed one, but relatively high speed. I use the Samsung Evo, works just fine. This thing shoots in 2.7K, so it doesn't need a really super high speed card, but it does need a good one. So assuming that you've got all that done, your batteries are charged, your remote control is charged up, that's where we're going to take up in this video. So I guess probably one of the first things that you want to tell everybody, and don't laugh, because anybody that's flown drones for very long, I guarantee you they've done it. Never power on the drone without taking off the gimbal cover first, because what that'll do is restrict the movement of the gimbal, and it potentially could damage it. Like I said, I've done it before. I'm sure almost every other drone flyer has, but it certainly isn't good for it. So always remember to remove that gimbal cover. It's also worth checking to make sure your SD card is installed and that you've got good power on your battery. So in this case, we'll see if we can see this. We should see 4 lights on this battery when I press the button. And I don't know if you guys can see that. I shaded it and was able to see that I do have 4 good lights. So that tells you you've got a charged battery in the drone and you're ready to go. So the next thing you're going to want to do is get your remote control ready. So in order to do that, you want to make sure you have your gimbals installed, which as you I'm sure have noticed already, there's a place to store them here at the bottom of the controller. So we just simply screw those on. Very easy to do. This is a handy little setup that DJI gave us here. And then you install your smartphone. Now, with regard to smartphones, I run an iPhone 11 here, which is a pretty powerful phone. I don't think that's completely necessary, but I'm just telling you, to fly any drone, any camera drone, you need a pretty decent phone. If you've got an older iPhone or one of the cheaper Android phones, you may have some problems. I've been hearing that there's some Android phones that simply don't work with the DJI Fly app. So I don't know what to say about that, but hopefully you've got the correct phone that'll work. So what I always do to install the phone, and the first thing I do is I hook up the iPhone connector, and I'm kind of doing this in front of the camera, so it's a little bit clumsy. But then because I've got an iPhone Max, it's a little bit bigger, so I shove the end with the connector into the holder, the arm first, and then I go for the other side, and the other side is the one I kind of cinch down. So your phone is going to be a little bit different, everybody's phone is going to be a little bit different, but that's basically how you put them in there. And then of course obviously you want to make sure that the patch cord is connected, or the OTG cable as it's called is connected. And then your antenna, obviously you want to fold those out. And a lot of people say to put them at 45 degrees. I think it depends on your style of how you fly. But the point of it is to keep the flat part of the antenna pointed towards the drone. So for instance, if the drone was right above you, you might have them down like that so that it's pointing the signal up. If it's out there and you're holding up like this, you might want them at 90 degrees, or often at 45, and you can just kind of hold it up and point them towards the drone. So, you know, you'll hear a lot of people say that it has to be one way or another. I'm going to tell you it's whatever works for you. So some people will tell you that you know, a specific order to turn on the drone, the controller, your app, etc. I'll just tell you how I do it, and I know it works. So what I always do is fire up the drone first, and then the controller, and then the app. And to fire up the drone, you just do one short press, and I always try and hold it level. So one short press, and then a 2-second press. And you'll hear the little tone that the drone plays, and you saw the gimbal go through its motion there. And then I'm going to go set this on the launch pad. So the next thing you're going to want to do is turn on your controller. So that is a just like with the bird itself, the drone, a short press and a long press. And you'll see the lights on the front of the drone, they'll blink. And when it connects, when the RC, the controller, connects to the drone, you'll see those lights go solid. They'll quit blinking. So it's connected to the drone. So now we need to get the app going. So I have here, as you can see, I've got the DJI Fly app at the bottom here. You'll see I've got a few DJI apps on there, and other drones as well. So I just click on that icon, and it came up immediately. And because I had started the RC, it's already updated the home point. And what the home point is that is the point at which the drone will come back and land that it took off from. I guess it'd be an easier way to say that. It's where it took off and where it will land. And as you can see here, it's telling us that the takeoff is permitted. So that means it's got all the GPS satellites that it needs. And if you look at the very top on the left there, or excuse me, on the right, you'll see that there's a little picture of a satellite with a 16 next to it. That means that it's got 16 drones. That next icon that looks like concentric little circles is the Wi-Fi, and then the picture of the battery tells us we have 87% battery. I use this battery for some other stuff, so that's why it's not completely charged. I would hope yours is. Now I'm looking at my map, and it seems to be a little bit confused here, so it's kind of moving around. So we'll take a look at that in a second here. But then in the top right, you'll see we're in mode P. That is the middle mode, the middle speed mode, essentially, of the drone. That stands for position mode. And that is kind of the normal mode of the drone. So it looks like the map is kind of settled down here, and it's found us here in Heroes Park. So if you want to look at the full map, we're going to touch on that one time, and that brings up the full map, and you can see where you're at. And you'll see some other things like the Find My Drone feature there too. We're not going to go into all that detail on this particular video, but then just to get back, you touch that again, and it brings you back to your main screen where you can see what the camera sees on the drone. People call that FPV, so you're looking at your FPV screen. So then you saw, I guess I should have not done that so fast. So in the bottom corner here, there's a little icon with two arrows looking at each other. That reduces the map down to that small size. And then right next to it, you can see the control that tells you your height. And right next to that, to the right of that, is your distance. And then I have this set in metric, so Above both of those is the speed in meters per second. You can set it to imperial if you wish, and I can show you how to do that real quick. Although, before we do that, so to change it to imperial, you're going to click in here, and this is a good place to start as well. Before we look at how we change it into imperial, this is fairly important here. So under safety, it's going to tell you your max altitude. In the US, obviously 400 feet is the max that we can take it per FAA regulation, so that equates to 120 meters, so that's why I have that set. I've got the distance set to 2,000 meters. That's 2 kilometers. I just don't see any need to fly this drone any further than that. And then I've got my return to home height set pretty high. I set it at 45 meters. So that's, you know, I want it to be way up there so that it doesn't, the drone, if there's some trees around or anything, it'll be well above them and won't be a problem. So yeah, I mean, that's about, I don't know, I guess just doing the quick math in my head, that's about 140 feet or so height, if we convert that to imperial. And then you know, this is telling me that my IMU is normal and my compass calibration is normal. If you haven't calibrated a compass before, there's a lot of videos out there on that. You'll probably want to do that before your first flight as well. Yeah, so then there's you know, the advanced settings. We can take a look at that, and that just tells you how emergency stop and how to put it into payload mode. But what they mean by payload mode is if you had the prop guards on there, or the cage as some people call it. But anyway, the main thing is you're seeing IMU is normal and compass is normal. That means you're good to fly. And then the update home point, we should look at that too. So yeah, so you can't look at that until it's in the air. But what that does is you can tell it to come back to its home point like it is here, or you can, if you move to a different location, you can update to that location, or you can have it return to the controller. But anyway, moving on here. So control here, this is where you're going to set the units, and so we'll move it to imperial just for this flight. I like using metric. I got used to it flying drones, and I like the factor of 10 that metric provides. But let's put it on imperial. And the gimbal mode, I always leave it in follow mode. That means that the gimbal is going to it's going to try and stay on the subject. If you put it in FPV mode, it's going to be more like an airplane mode. Well, you'll see the gimbal tilt and the horizon tilt, which is a tougher video to follow. But anyway, then you also see the 3 flight positions at the top there: Cinesmooth, position mode, P mode, or sport mode. I'm going to say position mode. You can start off in that. Cinesmooth mode gives you a lot more smooth video, etc. So I recommend that. I fly in that one a lot. And then sport mode, this thing will go pretty fast. I would get a few flights under your belt before you mess around in sport mode much. And then the camera, this first one is the size of the pictures. I shoot in 4.3. You can do a 16:9 aspect ratio. And there you see my video card. I've already formatted it, so it's ready to go. It's a 64 gig card. And then I won't go into advanced settings, but what that does is it sets up your histogram and your lines on your screen, and I do like to use those. Transmission, I would say as a beginner, just leave that in auto. That is selecting the frequency that the transmitter transmits on, and then about tells you what your firmware you happen to be running on your drone is, and battery and serial number, and you can see the battery times charged there and everything. So that's about it for that stuff. Let's quit messing around and let's get this thing in the air. So now I always like to shoot in video, but you can see that little thing that looks like a film strip there. If I touch that, that's where I can change from photo mode into photo mode from video mode. So if I touch on photo mode, then I would just simply touch that to take a picture. But I touch it again and I can, pardon me, well, my fingers are cold. I don't think it's, there we go. So So I touch that again and we go into video mode, touch video again, and I always shoot in the best mode possible. You can pick 1080p if you like, that's a lower mode, it'll use less space on your SD card, but I always shoot in 2.7K, and that 30 FPS stands for the frames per second. And then if we have time today, we'll look at some of the quick shots. Okay, I'm going to start recording here before we take off. I like to do that. Other people will tell you not to, but I like to start the video at first. So now we need to get into the air. So there's a couple ways to do that. We can just hit takeoff here on the screen, and it'll give us a button. You can manually arm the motors by moving them down and out, and they'll go into idle, and then all you do is you lift up on the left stick, and that will throttle the drone up. So then to shut the motors off after you've started them up, if you don't want to do a manual takeoff, same move, hold it, and that will shut off the motors. But what I like to do is an auto takeoff, and that's pretty easy here. So you just right here on the left side of the screen, touch that button and hold down that middle button, and you saw the green circle, and the drone takes off. And we've got a little bit of a breeze now, so the drone is affected by that breeze. Okay, I've moved the drone closer to the camera here so that you can see it a little better. So if I move the left stick, if I move it up, the drone will go up. If I pull it down, the drone will come down. If I want to yaw, that is turn the drone on its own axis, if I take that left stick and I turn it to the left, the drone will yaw to the left. So you can see it there spinning on its own axis. And then same thing to the right. If I want to turn to the right, I push that stick to the right, and the drone will turn on its own axis to the right. So now when you're flying, obviously you'll be turning the drone if you do that. But the other way that you turn the drone, and let's straighten it out here a little bit, is by rolling. So you can do in this case, the drone is facing away from us, so we're going to do a left roll, and that's with the right stick. I push it to the left, and the drone banks left. And then if I wanted to bank to the right, I push that stick to the right, and the drone banks to the right. So then how do you move forward and backward? Well, that's pretty simple. So in drone speak, that's called pitching forward and pitching backward. So that right stick, if I move it forward, you'll see the drone move forward. If I move it backwards, you'll see the drone move back. So that's just kind of the basics of control, and it's something that you're going to want to be in an open field like this to mess around with. So I'm just going to take the drone up in the air, and we'll just do some basic circles and figure eights, etc. So there I just moved it out, but if I want to turn, I can yaw a little bit, and you see the drone turn to the point that it's facing back towards us again, and I can bring the drone back towards us. Then if I want to turn the other way, I can yaw the other direction. And I think I took it out of frame there. So that's pitching forward and backwards. So that's kind of the basics of flight. So one of the most fun, I think, things you can do with the drone, some people call it a droney, I call it a pull-away shot. You can do it in quick shots with this drone, but it's also very easy to do manually. So I like to hold the the gimbals, I like to pinch them. I've kind of learned to do that. It kind of gives me more control. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go backwards and up, and that always makes for a cool shot. So we're going to go reverse, slowly, and we're going to start raising the drone. So down on the right stick, up on the left stick. And that always makes for a fun shot. So that's an easy kind of a shot that you can use to impress your friends, and that's something that should be easy enough to even do on like your first flight. Now be aware that you need to, this drone does not have any kind of obstacle avoidance, so you do need to understand that it could, you could back it into something, so you need to know where you're flying. So that was what I did there. That was just kind of a demonstration. So I just let go of the sticks, and the drone put on the brakes and came to a stop. So gosh, let's take a look at how you land the drone. So if you brought the drone back in for a manual landing, you would simply hover over your landing spot, and you can see we're getting a little breeze here. So let's talk about how you land the drone. In this case, we're positioned over the landing pad. You simply move the left stick down, and the drone will come down and it will go into landing mode. There you go. And as soon as the motor stops, you can let go of that gimbal. Okay, so let's take off again, and I'm going to show you another way to land the drone and to bring it home. So we're going to take off again, and we're going to go out a ways, and then we're going to put the drone into return to home and get it back to us, and it will auto land. So let's hit that takeoff button again. We did an auto takeoff last time. Let's do it with the sticks this time. So move the sticks out. That starts the motors. The left stick, if I just move it up, the drone takes off. So I'm going to pick up the other camera here a little bit so you can see it a little more. Gain a little altitude. So I'm kind of bringing it in the camera here so you can see it. So let's just turn around and let's fly to the corner of the park. So I'm going to use the yaw to turn the drone around, face it the direction that I want it to go, to the corner over here, and then I am going to push the right stick forward, and that will pitch the drone forward and move it in forward flight. And I'm going to gain a little altitude here, so that is picking up the left stick, and my vector is a little off, so I'm going to use a little yaw to get it where I want it to go. And we're out there we're about 38 feet high, and we're out about 250 feet, so that is far enough that we could do a return to home. So I'm going to yaw around and point the drone towards us so you can see where we're at. But for the return to home to work, the drone can be faced any direction. So anyway, there is the drone face towards us. I'm going to lower the gimbal here a little bit. So that's, now that we're talking about that, so the gimbal, that is this wheel here that's on the front of the controller, and you can raise the camera and you can lower the camera by turning that wheel. So let's pick it up just a little bit, and so to bring the drone home, we simply would hit return to home, and that's the same icon that we used to take off. Excuse my gnarly fingernails there. So the same icon that we used to take off, there's that return to home, so we can hit that. But there's also on the controller here, there's a return to home button. So let's hit that button and see if we can get the drone to come back home. So you hold it down, and then you'll hear that button, and you'll see that return to home there. And the drone, what it does first is it ascends to altitude. Remember I talked about the return to home height that I set it at? So that's what the drone is doing first. It's going to its return to home altitude. And I've been told you can shut off that beeping by pressing the power button real quick. Nah, that doesn't work. So let's drop the gimbal down so you can see where we're at. The drone came home pretty darn quick. So I'm lowering the gimbal straight down so you can see us. And you can see the landing pad there. Now what I'm going to tell you is this drone does not have precision landing. So it's may or may not land on the landing pad, and typically it's a foot or two away, but it's close enough that it'll come back to you. So now what we're going to do is if it looks like it's going to not be on the pad, and it looks like it's not, see it's slowing down there, and it automatically picked up the camera. I'm going to push that X, and that stopped it. And it's hovering in place now. Let's yacht around here so it's looking at us. So yeah, so it's just hovering in place once I hit that X. So remember that X. If your drone is coming down and you don't like where it's at, simply hit that X, and it will just stop and it'll hover in place. But let's try it again, and let's let it land next time. So we're going to go reverse and up. That droney that we talked about. So down on the right stick and up on the left stick. And let's get it out there a ways. Yeah, so we're out there a good, oh gosh, almost 300 feet. So the other way that you can do return to home is the icon on the FPV screen here. And FPV stands for first person view. So I'm going to lower the camera here a little bit, good old rule of thirds. That's why I like those grid lines. And it looks like I need to slow down my camera roll a little bit, because that was a little quick. I'm going to hit the return to home icon on the FPV screen, and you'll see it says you can either pick for it to land in place or return to home. I held down return to home, and it goes into that same mode that it did before. And it's ascended to altitude, and then now it's coming home. So I'll drop the gimbal here so that we can watch it come home to us. We'll drop it down just like we did before. Wow, look at it, it's right on the X this time. It might hit that landing pad. Who knows? It's a little off there. We'll see. We're just going to let it land this time, even if it lands in the grass. That's looking darn close. I'm thinking we might hit the pad this time. But don't expect that every time, because this drone does not have precision landing. You'll hear people talk about precision landing with other drones. The Mavic Mini does not have that feature. So it's coming down, it's slowly, so it picks up that camera itself automatically. And the reason it does that is it doesn't want the camera in the rocks. Well, that's pretty darn good. So it's on the pad. I'm pretty darn pleased with that. So let's quit messing around. Let's see, we've got 31% battery. So let's take off again real quick. I'm going to use the auto takeoff. So again, let's do that on the FPV screen. We're going to hold down the little takeoff button there, and then hold down the little circle, and the drone takes off. So it's telling us that it has found its home point. I'm going to pick it up and move it back just a little, and let's go into the quick shots. We can look at those real quick. So you have to stop recording before you can get into quick shots, which some people don't like that, and I guess I wish you didn't have to do that too. So we get out of that, and we've stopped recording. So now we click on the little film strip again at the top there, and it takes us into that camera screen, and then I hit the quick shots at the bottom there, and it then enables those quick shot modes. And we talked about a droney earlier. Now here you can set the distance that you want to go. Let's go 120 feet. We did one manually earlier, but let's try it. just with this quick shot mode. So we set it at 120 feet, so it will go back and away from us, and it will do it automatically. So then we have to, what we have to do first is, you'll see that plus sign on me. You can either draw a box or hit that plus sign. That's your point of interest or subject. So it just put that box around me. We can click start now, and it'll do a countdown, 3, 2, 1. And that same droney that we did manually before, it's going to do automatically. So it went out there it's just hit 120 feet. So one of the things I like, now some people don't like this, I do like it, it returns to where it took off from. Now other people will say that they don't like that. I think you can just hit the X there if you want to stop at that X on the right hand side of the screen. So let's see, battery wise, yeah, we still got some battery. Let's do something else. So I'm going to click on that droney icon top there, and it's going to take us back into that screen, and we're going to do a rocket next. So the rocket is where it'll keep the camera on the point of interest. So I set that to 120 feet, which is the maximum, and then I do the same thing. I hit that plus sign, it draws the box around me, hit the start button, 3, 2, 1, and it will keep the camera right on the point of interest, which is us, and it will go straight up. And you can see that X on the right hand side of the screen. See the white circle it's drawing around that? It's telling it, that's telling you how far through the process you are with the droney. Now we've hit the low battery warning, and it's telling us to come home. So it'll return to its original position now. And what we'll do, just for the fun of it, is we will, yeah, we're getting down there battery-wise, but as soon as it returns to where it was, we're going to back it up a little bit. So I'm hitting the reverse, gaining a little altitude, and I'm going to get out of that mode, and we're going to go back into, yeah, so it's telling us to go, that it's going to automatically go into return to home. So let's let it do that. You guys will get to see that. So you can either hit confirm or it'll just do it automatically. Let's go ahead and start filming. So I am filming. And so it automatically put itself into return to home. It's got an algorithm that knows how much battery power it needs to get back to its takeoff spot, and it's coming back. And that's me lowering the gimbal as it returns. And it's ascending to altitude again, that 145 feet we were talking about. And it's coming back to us. And I'm adjusting the gimbal downward so we can see it land. So yeah, let's see what it does. Looks like we're at about 13% battery, so we're right down there. I'm just going to let it land. We might mow the grass here, but I'm just going to let it land. So if you see that little timer at the right, that tells you how many minutes of flight we've got left. Look at, it's going to hit that landing pad right on. And this drone, again, it does not have precision landing, and looks like my other camera stopped. So we're not going to see that on the Canon camera. The problem with my Canon M50 is once the file size reaches a certain size, it stops recording, and so this was one of those cases. And I'm sorry, because it landed right in the middle of the H. That would have been cool to have on video. So I'm going to start video again. Well, so the Canon camera is recording again, and you saw it. You can see it in the middle of the H, but you saw the recording from the camera itself. So the other thing I'm going to tell you is on this particular drone, most other DJI drones you don't have to worry about it, but if you do not stop recording, it often will not close out that video file, and the file will be corrupted and unusable. So make sure you stop recording when you land so that it closes out that file and you don't have a corrupted file. So if that happens, I'll tell you an easy way to correct it. So if you landed and you shut off your drone and you forgot to stop recording, simply turn the drone back on, connect to it again, start it recording again, and it'll start another recording file, and then hit stop again, and it'll close out that other file that it didn't close out before. Or that's been my experience in the past. I don't know if that'll work every time, but I've had it work like that for me in the past. So now basically then you're just shutting everything down. So hopefully you can see it here. You can see the drone is still on. You see the light blinking on the back. That's how you can tell the drone is still powered on. So to shut it off, you simply short press and long press that button, and the drone will shut down. And you can tell it's shut down because that light on the back will quit blinking. Okay, so you're done with your RC, and you've got it shut down already. And it's just a matter of folding up the antenna, taking your phone out of the connector here, unplug it, and then one of the things that I often forget is to take the gimbals off before I put it into the back into its little case. But those gimbals just snap right in there. They're very easy to unscrew. Snap them in the bottom. I fold up the arms there, and boom, it's ready to go back in the case. So then to put your drone away, obviously don't forget to put that this gimbal protection cover back on. I'm going to say that this drone is fairly fragile compared to some other drones that I have. So you definitely don't want to forget this. You definitely want to protect that gimbal. So you just latch it in the top, and like in this case, you can see I'm a little crooked there. It can be a little bit fiddly, but there's a spot there that it'll fit into, and then you can see that the camera is straight. You put those top notches in, and then you just snap it into place. And I know that DJI has a product, and there's other aftermarket products that'll hold your props in place so they don't get bent up. I think that's a good idea. I put it in a case, and I think the case holds them in place pretty well. But that's, you know, that's something you should consider. So I want to say that by no means do I consider this video to be the end-all and be-all of a beginner's guide for the Mavic Mini, but I think that'll help you get in the air and hopefully help some folks that it's their first time out with basic controls and so forth. There's a ton of beginner's guides out there on YouTube. I encourage you to watch several of them. One of the best ones I've seen, Ed Ricker did a really good one. Billy Kyle's got a really good one. So there's some really comprehensive videos out there. But I hope that this helped you get your drone in the air for the first time. And this Mini is just more fun than a barrel full of monkeys. And if you're a first-time drone user, let me tell you, you're spoiled, because a lot of us started on drones that were not nearly this refined. This thing flies very, very well. And it just occurred to me now that we're all done with the flight that I didn't go into the other flight modes. We were in P mode that whole time, which is position mode. That's the middle mode and middle speed of the drone. If you're first starting out, consider putting it in C mode, which is the Cine mode. And that slows down the controls and makes the drone smoother and even easier to control yet. You know, then sport mode is the top speed mode. It's really fun. Once you get a few flights under your belt, don't be afraid to try that one out. But make sure you do, on your first flight, you go out in the middle of an open field like this. So you got plenty of room to mess around, and you know, that you don't crash into a tree. It's really easy. This thing doesn't have obstacle avoidance, you know. You don't want to crash into a tree or a fence or something like that. So, you know, I guess I would caution, don't just go out in your backyard and try and fly it. You should take it out, like I said, in an open area like this, a park. You don't want a bunch of people around, someplace where you've got some room to roam a little bit. The other thing that I will mention is there's a couple of apps that I use that tell me when it's safe to fly. So the FAA has an app called the Before You Fly app. And I always, whenever I go to a place, I always bring up the Before You Fly app, and it's GPS related, and it'll tell you whether you're in a no-fly zone or not. Just because this is 249 grams doesn't mean that you don't have to abide by regulations. So obviously you can't fly near airports, etc. There's a lot of rules. I encourage you to go to the FAA website and look them over. But the Before You Fly app will tell you you're good to go. It literally says you're good to go at the bottom of the app if it's someplace that it's legal for you to fly. And then the other app that I use a lot is called UAV Forecast. And basically what that does is it just tells you your weather conditions, what the temperature is, what the wind is, and so forth. And that makes me think of one more thing. I almost lost this drone flying it in high winds. It's not a terribly powerful drone, so I wouldn't fly it in winds any more than 10 miles an hour or so. But it also will warn you. On the app, it'll tell you high wind warning. And if you see that, I'm going to say probably don't fly. But if you do fly, keep the drone pretty close to you and away from trees and buildings, etc., so that it doesn't get blown into something and you lose the drone. Yeah, gosh, that's about it. Anyway, this is Marcus Crawford with the Idaho Quadcopter channel out. And if you like this kind of content, please consider subscribing to my channel. I really appreciate you looking at this video. And yeah, look through my library of videos on YouTube. I've done a lot of flying with this little drone. So you can look and you can learn from some of my mistakes. One of the things I do is when I make a mistake with a drone, I show it on the video. I don't try and hide anything. We're all human. This is Marcus Crawford with the Idaho Quadcopter channel out. And if you like this kind of content, please subscribe to my channel. But most of all, I appreciate you looking at this video. Alrighty, we will see you on the next one. The little Mavic Mini. Fun little drone. Bye now.